Well, welcome back to this summer series we're calling Life First. I'm going to share my life first with you today on Father's Day. And I know that Father's Day has some mixed emotions for all of us. I know there's some listening to me, and you just didn't have a dad at home when you were growing up. And that's unfortunately a common story. And it's a story of a girl named Camille who's a part of our church. And so many of you have stepped in as spiritual dads and his family to this incredible family. And she got some amazing news this past week. Let me show you a picture of Camille. This is her. She wanted to say thank you for praying for her. She was diagnosed with leukemia last year. It's been quite a battle, just emotionally up and down for her, obviously, and her mom and her family. But I just want you guys to know this is a picture of her last chemo treatment, and she is cancer-free, everybody. So it's awesome. Love it. Congratulations to Camille. And that's what church family is all about, by the way. This is a family. So if you're like, well, I didn't have a dad. Well, you do now, okay? You don't have a mom. You do now. You got brothers and sisters you didn't even know you had. And when we get together, we experience life together, the highs, the lows, and I love that. And I love that there's spiritual dads. I've mentioned to you guys many times that Pastor Ken is like a spiritual dad to me. He's been in ministry longer than I've been alive. I'm so thankful to have people like that. And so Paul was a spiritual dad to a guy named Timothy. So I'm going to ask you to turn to 1 Timothy. If you don't have a Bible, would love to give you one. I'm going to ask you to take out your message notes as well. Whether you're a dad or not, I'm going to give you 5 words today that we all need. There are 5 of the most important words that any dad needs, but this message is for everybody. So these are 5 words for everyone. Everyone needs these. And so I'll give those words to you in a minute. I just want you to realize, though, when I'll speak to men and dads throughout the message, and I want you to know that men, you need to write these 5 words down. I know there's a lot of things that men talk about, we debate about, really important things like PGA and LIV. The debate is still going on, you know. I got a strong opinion about that. That's fine. You can debate about PGA and LIV, but these 5 words are how to live. How to be a champion for your family. That matters, okay? So be sure to write this down when I give them to you. Now, what's beautiful about my life verse that I'm going to share with you today is my dad unknowingly picked it. Now, he's been in heaven 5.5 years, but when I was 12 years old, my dad gave me a Bible, and he wrote this verse in the front of it. Now, it's crazy because if you read 1 Timothy 4:12 and you keep reading, it actually is a man called to ministry, which is pretty crazy. But unknowingly, when my dad wrote this, he just wanted to challenge me about what I want to challenge you about today. And it's very appropriate for Father's Day, even though this message is for everybody. And we need to really hone in on dads for a second, because dads get a lot of flack. I mean, like, there's a lot of jokes about dads. And then you've got dad jokes, which is a whole nother thing. And I thought, since this was Father's Day, maybe I should tell a dad joke. Why not? Do you know why dads carry an extra pair of socks when they go play golf? Because they might get a hole in one. Oh, that went over pretty good. I'll do one more. So, you ever wonder what the fastest growing country in the world is, you know? Well, it's Ireland, because every year they're doubling. Okay, yeah, I'll stop there. So, dad jokes, that's a good thing, right? But I want to just kind of encourage you that being a dad is no joke. It is the most important job that a man can ever do. It is the most important job that a man can ever undertake. And that's why it's so hard to do. And I believe it's one of the reasons why that as men, we don't know how to be a dad. A lot of us didn't have maybe a good example of that or whatever it might be. And so as I talk to men, this is why we stay at work. Because we understand work, we understand goals, we understand product, we understand that there's performance. But when we get home, it's like, what am I doing? What is this? What do I think it's a big reason why, one, we need to talk about it today, but 2, I think it's why Father's Day is just not the most popular holiday. Do you know the most popular holiday? You could probably guess. That's Christmas, right? Do you know the number 2 most popular holiday? Mother's Day. Jesus and Mom. Do you know where Father's Day falls? Guys, we're not even the top 10. We get beat out by St. Patrick. And I think it's because as dads, we're like, wait a minute, what does it mean? It's important, it matters. But how do you do it and what does it look like? Because we know there's something about it. I mean, I was even looking at this week. Father's Day is the smallest American gift-giving holiday. In other words, when you look at what people buy to give, dads, we're at the bottom. We get beat out by Halloween. People would rather give candy to strangers than something to their dad, okay? This is rough. And we know it's important. Listen, dads are awesome, okay? So this is a really quick video. It got over 1 million hits, but this dad is at a baseball game and the batter lets go of his bat and it goes straight for him and his kids, and check out the reflexes that this dad has. There's the bat, boom, blocks his 2 kids from dying and never spills his beverage. Let's give it up for that dad. That's amazing. Dads. You know, dads are awesome. You know, and that's what made me think of dads, like dads protect, you know, dads provide. But I'm going to share with you the most important thing dads do, and that's dads lead. And I want it to be for everybody, so I just want you to know everybody's a leader. So I just want to talk about how to lead. So if you ever wanted to be a leader or any profession, any walk of life, in a business, if you want to lead a family, an organization, a team, you're going to need the same 5 words. But if you want to learn about leadership, read the Bible. And here in 1 Timothy, here's what's happening. Paul is writing to Timothy, and Timothy's a young leader. Paul started a church in Ephesus. He leaves Ephesus and leaves Timothy in charge. And now he's going to write back to Timothy. I want you to think about this. Paul wrote whole churches. We walk through the book of Colossians. That's Colossae. He writes to the Colossians. That's where you get the name of the book. But can you imagine getting a letter and it's only addressed to you? Paul wrote whole groups of people, but no, Timothy, here it is. And if you want to learn about leadership, read 1 Timothy. He tells Timothy how to organize the church, how to protect the church, but also how to lead. So here it is, 1 Timothy 4:12, my life verse. It's really leadership 101. Paul says to Timothy, don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers. And what he's going to do is give Timothy the 5 areas of leadership. He says, set an example in 5 areas: in what you say, in how you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity. Those are the 5 areas I want us to talk about. Before I do, though, let me give you 2 quick things about leadership you need to know that are from this verse. If you want to be a leader, write this down. Never make excuses. He tells Timothy, he says, don't let anybody look down on you because you're young. Never make excuses. Timothy's excuse was, hey, I'm too young. I can't lead this place. I can't do this because I'm too young. And he was tempted to make the excuse of age as to why he shouldn't be a leader. Now, speaking of the young leading the way, I'm just so proud of the teenagers who served at Vacation Bible School. And I think I have a few pictures of students who are helping kids look to Jesus, and this is just 3 of many, many examples. Let's just give it up for the teenagers who served at Vacation Bible School, saying, hey, I'm influencing the next generation. And these students, I love the teenagers of real life because they don't say, oh, I can't lead yet. They say, what do you need me to do? I'm in. I'll step up, and they lead the way for all of us. And so don't make excuses. You know, what is your excuse for not being a leader? You may say, well, it's the opposite of being young. I'm old. Well, I want to remind you that Moses was 80 years old when he got a call to go to Egypt and a mission for his life, okay? So if you're 80, you're just about ready for something big. Maybe your excuse is, I've made too many mistakes. I've messed up. I can't do it. You don't know all the things that I've done. I don't, but I know who God is. I know he picks people who have already counted themselves out. He picks people who literally have struck out in the 9th inning with the bases loaded, and he says, bat again. Remember Peter? Did Peter ever make a mistake? Peter denied Jesus 3 times in a row in one night after telling Jesus, I'll never deny you. Guess who Jesus picked to preach the very first sermon of the church? Peter. Paul used to kill Christians, guys. That is not a little thing. That's not like, oops, sorry, Lord. Took people's lives for being Christians. Guess who Jesus chose to be the #1 first missionary of the church? He made a murderer a missionary. I don't know what your excuse is, but I want to make you a promise. You are a leader. If you're online in Corpus, right here in the room, just say to your neighbor, just tell them you're a leader. Just tell them you're a leader. You are. Everybody's a leader. Everybody influences somebody. He says, never, ever make excuses. Write this one down. He says, always be an example. He's telling Timothy, don't make excuses while I'm young. That's not an excuse. And then he says, be an example. Not just to anybody. Did you notice this? He says, to all believers. Wow. Not just anyone, but to the people who believe, who are further in you in the faith. And that definition of the word example is like, be a model of this. Be a pattern of what could be followed. And just to remind you guys, leadership is influence for sure. But influence is caught, not taught. You can teach on leadership, but you can't learn it unless you see it. And he's saying, Timothy, lead out. Be a leader. Be an example. Lead whoever is following you. And just to remind dads, you are leading your family. You say, no, I'm not. You are. Even if you're not, you are. I don't know where you're taking them, but you are leading them. You, as a dad, lead the family. You are the one who sets the pace. And we're going to see that today, but I'm just going to encourage dads to realize that you lead by example. You know, my dad, when he was concentrating on something, when I was growing up, when my dad was concentrating on something, especially if it was like a hammer and nail, like something really, I got to really focus, he would always do this. He would always go, and that's how he concentrated. Now, does anybody want to guess what I did when I was 5 years old and I needed to concentrate? I mean, even if it was on something important like Play-Doh, what would I do as a 5-year-old? I'd go, did you know that my dad and I never had a conversation about that? He never sat me down and said, all right, son, this is how you concentrate. You use your tongue. That's it, son. Not too hard. Don't bite your tongue off, son. There you go. That's really good. That's really good. Okay, now you're back. And we never had that conversation. I watched him. I did what he did. You ever heard that game, Follow the Leader? That's Dad. He's the leader. And whatever he does, I'm going to do the same thing. And my dad led the way, even in silly things like that for sure, and in serious things. There's a research group in Switzerland that was trying to figure out why religion is declining so quickly. It's a great question. And what they found is a lot of it is tied to dads. Very interesting. They kind of stumbled into it. That wasn't why they did the research. But one of the things they looked at is the family dynamic and who's going to church and who's going with church with them. And what they found is if a family is just made up of mom, if mom is going to church but not dad, and they did a 10-year study on this. If mom goes to church and not dad, there's a 2% chance that kid's going to go to church as an adult in their 20s. 2% chance. Very interestingly, though, they found if a dad goes to church and the mom doesn't come, but if dad goes to church and takes the kids to church, there is a 44% chance that kid's going to church as an adult. That is empirical data to tell you, whether you like it or not, that dads are the ones that are leading, and they're leading by example. And so he's saying, Timothy, be an example even to believers. That means that your kids aren't asking this question, but internally they're saying, Dad, what's important? What matters in life? Don't worry, Dad, don't answer. I'll just watch you. And you can tell me. Dad, I'm watching, and you can just show me. And I just want to give a challenge to all the dads. Let's take our example to the next level. Because the greatest thing you can ever give your kids is not a toy at Christmas. It's an example. The greatest thing you can offer your kids is not keys when they're 16 to a car. It's an example. The greatest thing you can give your kids, the greatest thing you can leave your kids as a legacy is not a 401k plan, but it's an example. That's the legacy. And I just want to encourage you to lead, okay? So there's 5 areas of leadership that he lists in 1 Timothy 4:12, and I want you to write all these 5 words down, okay? Here's the first word, words. Words. Leadership is at its core is what you say. Leaders inspire by their words. Leaders give direction and motivation by their words. And you have a choice. Words can deflate a team, can deflate a family, can deflate everybody around you, or they can elevate a team. They can elevate a family. They can elevate everybody around you. There's your choices. Are you going to deflate or elevate? He tells Timothy, be an example in what you say. Leadership is, at its core, encouragement. I told the staff this week, a few weeks ago, that leadership and encouragement go together. And if you haven't encouraged anybody this week, you haven't led anybody. They're two sides of the same coin. He's telling Timothy the same thing. Leadership is encouragement. And so look at this verse, Proverbs 10. I know these aren't in your notes, but they're going to be on the screen. And let's read this together. If you're online here in the room, say this with me. The words of a good person give life, like a fountain of water. So this is for all of us. We should give life with our words. And I just want to encourage dads. Listen, dads, you are the biggest cheerleader of your family. This is empirically determined, okay? And that means, here's an assignment just for dads. Just try this for 1 week, okay? Every day this week, dads, just walk into your, listen, don't tell anybody it's coming. Don't say, hey, is everybody listening? Don't set it up. Just say, I love this family. Just once a day for this week. Just try it. Just tell me how it goes. And just surprise them. You're like, really? Are you serious? I'm serious. I mean, just walk into your house and just go, I love this family. Just when you're driving and everybody's in the car, just say, I love this family. What are you doing? Well, dad loves the family, I guess I should too. With your words, you are literally motivating the whole group. And here's an assignment for all of us. This week, I want to encourage everybody listening to me to affirm the people in your life once a day, every day this week. You say, what is an affirmation? Isn't it sad we don't even know how to affirm anymore? Just say something like this, I'm proud of you. You're like, well, I can't really say that right now. Okay, just go with this one, I love you. Man, they're really messing up, Pastor. Just say, I'm praying for you, okay? But either way, just be motivating in some way that's honest and use your words. Okay, look at Proverbs 5, verse 2. It says, be careful to use good sense and, 4 words, say it with me, watch what you say. Words is how you lead. Here's another word, write this down, reputation. Reputation. He tells Timothy in 1 Timothy 4:12, be an example to all believers in what you say, that's words, in the way you live, that's reputation. In the Greek, it literally means, and how it's formed, how you carry yourself through life. It's how people observe you, how you behave, how you react to situations, how you respond to things, what you do in a crisis, just how you carry yourself. It's how you get a reputation. When people hear your name, what do they think of? Oh, they hear that, oh, listen, he's really calm under pressure. Oh yeah, she's really a stable force for anyone around her. It's just this reputation that you build. Look at Proverbs chapter 10, verse 11. It says, even children are known by the way they act, whether their conduct is pure and whether it is right. Let me ask this question online, right here in the room. Parents, I don't care if your kid's 2, 16, doesn't matter. How many of you parents, there is a kid in your kid's life that if your kid asked you, can I go to so-and-so's house? Or if your kid asks you, can I go and spend the night at so-and-so? Or your kid asks you, can I go hang out with them? They cannot go because of the reputation of that other kid. Is anybody out there know somebody? All right, yeah. All it is there's a reputation. This is what this verse is saying. Even kids are known by that. And so are we. So what is the reputation you are building? I'm just so thankful that my dad left me a good reputation to follow. You know, he was in the Air Force, and he was saved in the Air Force. And he would always tell me, he's like, Mike, and then he went into the ministry. So he went from literally a military base to the seminary. And he told me, he said, Micah, the military and the ministry have a lot in common. You're always in a battle, but we're on the winning team. And he literally he was all in. On Sundays, I didn't wonder where we were going on Sunday morning. As a child, I wonder where we're going today. We're going to church. Unless you have a contagious illness, unless you are dying, or unless you are dead, you're going to church. It was never a question. That's where we're going. Dad never gave me a speech like, okay, guys, this is why church is important. Really want you to believe this like I do. He's like, we're going to church. Get dressed. 5 minutes. Okay. And then when the offering plate came by, my dad would give. He would literally look at me every time he gave something. He said, Micah, giving is how you say thank you to God. And he looked at me and he would say, son, always say thank you. My dad's the one that taught me about tithing, not a pastor. He literally, he was good at math. I didn't get that gene. But anyway, he knew, this is what you got. 10% of that is this. And that's how I learned about that. My dad, left me a great reputation. The last Sunday my dad was alive, he didn't know it was his last Sunday, and I didn't either. None of us did. but he got to be here in Austin, and let me show you a few pictures. This is his last Sunday on the earth, and he got to go to Bowie High School, and he and my mom, he said, Micah, this has been such a great day. I got to go to church. I'm like, well, I already knew you were going to do that. He goes, I got to hear you preach. This is great. You know what we did right after that? Then we went to baptisms, like we're going to have baptism today. And I'll show you this baptism because you can't see my dad in the picture because he's waiting right outside the tank. And everybody that got baptized, my dad is hugging them. He's getting soaking wet. Every like he would just be like, congratulations. This is the most important decision of your life. You'll never regret following Jesus. That was his last Sunday. Well, after baptism, he had to dry off like everybody else. And then he hung out with his grandkids. Here he is hanging out with his grandkids and just on the back porch. And we had some food, and then he just got to just talk to every one of his grandkids. He didn't know that was the last day on this earth. But he lived every day like, I'm going to live. I'm going to set an example for everyone. That's what he did. That's a reputation. Now, 5 days after these pictures, my dad dropped dead of a brain aneurysm, and he didn't know it was his last Sunday. But it didn't matter because that's how he lived. Now, my brother and I were cleaning out his desk the week after he went to heaven, and on his desk was an envelope with his giving envelope to the church. And the day before he died, which he didn't know was the day before he died, he got his Social Security check, and exactly 10% of that Social Security check was in that tithe envelope. And it was ready to go to church that Sunday. That's the legacy of my dad. That's what a reputation looks like. And he's like, this is how you live. Here's a third word, write this down, kindness. Leaders are kind. 1 Timothy 4:12 says, be an example in your love. Now that word love, the way it's structured in the Greek, literally is where we get our word charity. It's actually where we get our word benevolence. So what is benevolence? Well, benevolence is when you give something to someone else that they need. Well, what do people need? People need kindness. He's telling him, be kind, Timothy. And so this is my assignment this week. I'm going to ask you, this isn't just for dads, it's for everybody, to be kind to everybody in your life this week. And you may be pushing back in your mind and saying, I'm just not a nice person. That's my reputation. Well, I'm going to ask you to get a new reputation. And did you know that you have to practice to be kind? That's how you get kind. Nobody's born to, you have to practice. Practice makes perfect. You have to play like you practice, all right? So if you really want to be a kind person, you got to practice. Let me show you this verse on the screen. Colossians 3:12. Look at what it says. Since you've been chosen by God who has given you this new kind of life, so it's a new kind of life. It doesn't matter if you used to not be nice or mean, whatever. It's a new kind of life. And because of his deep love and concern for you, read the last 9 words with me, real life. Let's say this phrase together. You should practice tender-hearted mercy and kindness to others. Turn to your neighbor and say, I'm going to practice, okay? I'm going to practice. Now you have accountability because you're probably going to be practicing on them. So be kind, okay? So I'm going to be kind. You have to practice being kind. And you may say, well, that doesn't work in this world, especially in business. You got to be cutthroat. It's dog eat dog. It's stab them in the back before they stab you. And I want you to know that it does work. You said, no, it doesn't. Kindness doesn't work. Love doesn't lead. Yes, it does. Leadership is love. You can lead by loving. As a matter of fact, it's the best way to lead. Did you know that's how God leads you? Look at this verse on the screen, Exodus chapter 15, verse 13. It says, with your unfailing love, you lead. Wow. God leads us with love. You lead the people you have redeemed. And so if God leads that way, I'm going to ask you to try God's way this week. Did you know that God's love led you here today? You may have thought you came here to maybe see somebody get baptized. You may have thought you came here to win binoculars. You may have thought you came here because your dad promised you could eat brisket right after this. All right? But God led you here. And you said, why did he lead me here? Don't miss this, because he wanted to talk to you. He wanted to tell you, I love you. I sent my only son to die for you. And he's alive. And he wants to live in you. And he's worth following. Believe. Ask for forgiveness. Ask for freedom. Follow him because he is worth following. And it's the kindness and the love of God that draws us. And that's what makes people move and change is kindness. Write this 4th word down, conviction. Paul told Timothy to be an example in what you say and how you live, how you love, and your faith. But what he's telling Timothy is let your faith, this is literally what the word means, to be convincing. Be so convinced and convicted for yourself that it moves other people to believe. In other words, he's telling Timothy to have such a contagious and courageous faith that when you meet somebody that is not a believer, they will believe in God after talking to you. Have so much faith and be so convinced and courageous that literally when people meet you and maybe their faith is wavering, I don't know if God's going to come through. I don't know if he's there for me. And by meeting you, they're like, I believe again. I'm not wavering because I've met you. Look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says, what is faith? Well, it's the confident assurance. There's that conviction. It's this confidence and assurance that something we want is going to happen. It is the certainty, there's that conviction again, that what we hope for is waiting for us, even though we cannot see it up ahead. And listen, if you want to lead people, make sure you can see further than they can. Make sure that you stand and say, I believe this is going to happen. I can see it. I know God is real. I know he will come through, and I know he loves us, and he is with us, and he'll make a way. If you want to lead, you got to have that kind of faith, he's telling Timothy. Now, look at 1 Thessalonians 1:5. This is Paul writing again. He says, for we brought the good news to you. Paul says, this is how to lead. It wasn't just with words. Words is one of the five, but it's not all five. But also with power and the Holy Spirit, and with complete, here it is the word, conviction of the truth. You know how we lived when we were with you. It was for your own good. Listen, when you met Paul, you didn't wonder, like, I wonder if that guy believes. When you met Paul, Paul literally was beaten for being a Christian. He had stripes on his back. When he walked in the room and said, I believe, you didn't question that. Paul was stoned and left for dead because he was a follower of Jesus. And it says after the people that thought they murdered him left, he kind of got up. Paul says, I believe there's a God. I believe in his son, Jesus Christ. And when you met Paul, you didn't wonder if his faith was contagious. His hope was certain. And that's what he's telling Timothy. Look at Hebrews 6, verse 12. It says, then knowing what lies ahead for you, you won't become bored with being a Christian. The Christian life is not boring, he's saying, nor become spiritually dull or indifferent. You're never going to lead somebody by being indifferent. Well, I don't know. Well, maybe. Well, I don't know. Whatever you want to do. You're never going to lead anybody that way. He's saying if you want to, instead, you will follow the example of those who are going to inherit God's promises because of their faith and endurance. He's saying, Timothy, I need you to stand up and say, the Christian life's not boring, it's a blessing. And not be indifferent, but stand before the people and lead them. And if you want to lead, that's the kind of leader you have to be. You have to stand up and say, listen, I don't know what you believe, and I don't care what the culture's saying, and I don't care what the latest poll is. I believe. I believe that there's a God. I believe his son is Jesus Christ. I believe Jesus came back to life. I believe Jesus lives in me. I believe Jesus lives in anyone who will turn to him. I believe I'm going to heaven one day, so you can't stop someone who knows what's going to happen after death. And I literally will pray heaven comes down to earth and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I believe. That kind of faith will move people. That kind of faith will literally rattle. It'll move homes, businesses, organizations, every friend network you got, but you got to believe. Now, I love the men of real life, and I love this example of a dad. His name is Rob, and a few weeks ago, Rob was watching online, and we say hello to our online family. He was on the online family because his child was sick. So his son was sick. He cared about all of you guys, so he didn't come. And so he has his son at home, but he's watching online, gets points for that. While Rob is watching, this dad is listening to me speak, talking about following Jesus and mentioning that people are going to get baptized after the service. And when I'm talking about following Jesus and baptism is saying, I'm not ashamed of Jesus, why would you wait to do that? Rob is touched and he decides, I need to get baptized today. He literally gets out ways and is like, how fast can I get to real life? Pastor Mike is 7 minutes from being done and I'm 28 minutes away. And he literally texted his wife and said, I'm going to go get baptized. Meet me at that water. And I'm bringing the sick kid with me. And Rob shows up and was the last person to get baptized. I don't even know the story, but he literally, pulls in the parking lot, runs up. Did I make it? You made it. And here's his picture. Here's Rob. And he's in that baptistry, and he's so full of joy. And his wife is there. and his 2 kids are there, and he's saying, I believe. And I want my family to believe. And I want to lead with faith. And faith is action. Faith is doing something no matter what anyone else thinks, what anyone else does. And I believe Jesus died. He was buried. He rose again. I believe I am not a perfect man, but Jesus died for all of my sins, and I'm a new person from the inside out. And I believe I am now baptized into this family. And I have brothers and sisters, and there are people I can serve and be a part of and love. And I can literally push back darkness with the light and love of Jesus because I have faith. And I have conviction. So let's give it up for conviction. That's awesome. Way to go, Rob. Good stuff. I love it. And just know today, if you're a mom or a dad, the greatest thing you'll ever do is not get a post that has 10,000 likes. The greatest thing you'll do is not get a bonus for your work. The greatest thing you'll do is not get a pay raise or get a new promotion in whatever your title is at work. The greatest thing you'll ever do is make an investment in the next generation who are with you all the time and let them know that there's faith. Be convinced of it in your own life. And today, right after this message and service, we're going to baptize 24 people are getting baptized today, guys. That's awesome. It's incredible. And it's so exciting to see the life change, and I'm so excited to be a part of that with you. And listen, some of you have been led here by others in you know that are getting baptized. I just want to welcome you home. It's not an accident you're here because God is leading you right now and wants you to have that same kind of faith. And write this 5th word down and know that character matters. If you want to lead, you have to have character. You have to have integrity. And this is the most important of all 5, and it's the hardest one to do. Paul uses the word purity. That word purity means who you are when no one's looking. In other words, reputation is what people think they know about you, but character is who you really are. It's what God sees. It's the core of yourself. It doesn't mean that you're perfect, but it's more about direction than perfection, but I have integrity. Now listen, just because you choose integrity, and integrity takes a lifetime to build, it takes a moment to lose. But when you build integrity, what you're saying is not, I'm not always going to be perfect or my life's going to be beautiful, I'll never have any problems. You're going to have problems, your integrity will hold you. Let me show you this in Job chapter 1, verse 1. It says, there was once a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz, and he was blameless, a man of complete integrity. That's the Hebrew version of this word purity, complete purity. And here's a great definition of purity. It's in this next phrase. He feared God and stayed away from evil. In other words, integrity is what you say yes to, but it's also what you say no to. And Job said yes to God, and then he said no to a lot of things because of his yes. And people follow character. You say, man, how can I follow a path of integrity? How can I set an example of a pure life? Well, look at Psalm 119, verse 9. It tells us, look at what it says. It says, how can a young person stay pure? How do you do this? How do you have integrity these days? Well, there's 4 words. If you're online right here in the room, say it with me. What does it say? By obeying your word. Now look right up here, by obeying your word. As your pastor, I want to encourage you to get a life verse, to find a verse that guides your life, to say, you know what, this is the anchor, this is the truth, this is what's going to guide me. Not my feelings will deceive me. Not what I think is right, you'll lie to yourself every time. And not even your willpower, but his word. When Jesus was tempted by the devil, if anybody could have just said, devil, get away from me, it would have been Jesus. But Jesus defended himself with the word. He quoted scripture to Satan himself. It's what protected him. Listen, that's what's going to protect you. Willpower cannot do it by itself. You cannot say, I will not think about pink elephants ever again. I can't believe I ever thought about pink elephants. I am never, ever going to think about pink elephants, go around pink elephants. Now I just want to go find a pink elephant right after this. Whatever your pink elephant is, willpower is not enough. God's word works. It defends you. He says, obey the word. Now, I'm going to speak just to the men, and I just want to say to the men of real life, be men of the word. Read this book every day. Read a chapter a day. Start in Proverbs. That's what my dad told me. And just say, you know what, I want this book to get inside of me and stand for that truth. Be a man. Real men stand up. Stand up for God. Live it out. Just don't know the word, but live it out. And I just want you to know, dads, we need you and we love you. And no matter what you think has happened in the past, stand up today for the Lord. Men of real life decide to stand for God. And all of us, can we just decide today that we're not going to just float through life? We're not just going to be neutral in our Christian walk. We're not going to be, as we just read, kind of indifferent. Yeah, I might read my Bible, I might not, Yeah, you can come to church, but I don't know why you would. You can sit next to me, but you're probably going to say no. But instead, let's lean in. Let's have a contagious, courageous, convinced faith that really does set an example with our love and here with our integrity. Now I'm going to put a verse just for the men, Psalm 101, verse 2, and I want just the men of real life to read this with me, and let's read the Bible as only men can read the Bible, okay? Here we go. I will lead a life of integrity in my own home. One more time, men, say it together. I will lead a life of integrity in my own home. I'm going to ask you to make that your declaration. I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead this family with love and kindness, with words of affirmation. I'm going to lead this family with a convinced and contagious faith. And I'm going to lead this family with how I live. My reputation changes today because you're probably saying, well, it's too late. I can't lead. You don't know how much I've messed up. Here's the great thing. It's not about you being an example. That's not where you start. It's about God changing you as an example of his kindness and love so you can give that kindness and love away. Let me show you how this works in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 7. Here it is on the screen, and it's absolutely beautiful. It says, now God can always point to us as examples. You're like, well, I'm not a great example of being a Christian. I'm not a great example of love. I'm not a great example of kindness. Hold on, what is it saying? We're examples of how very, very rich his kindness is as shown in all he has done for us through Jesus Christ. You're an example of grace. And when you're changed by grace, you give grace. When you're changed by kindness, you give kindness. And when you meet God's love, you cannot help but love other people. That's why this is on every dad's bookmark, 1 Corinthians 11:1. It's 10 words, and would everyone say it with me? Let's say these 10 words together. What does it say? Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Would you look right up here? My closing question is who are you following? So what do you mean, who am I following? I'm a leader. I understand that. We already covered that. Everybody's a leader. Everybody influences somebody, but who are you following? Because if you want to be a leader, you have to determine who is your model of leadership. And I want to encourage you today to choose Jesus. Jesus is the model of leadership. Think about it, friend. 2,000 years ago is when he lived. And today, 2,000 years later, he's got 2.6 billion followers. Follow Jesus. He is the ultimate leader of all time. And when you choose, which I hope you do today, to follow Jesus, everybody who's following you follows Jesus. I mean, today, one of the people getting baptized, there's 24 amazing stories. One of them is Zoe. Zoe's getting baptized. And Zoe is 6 years old, okay? And Zoe usually doesn't sit up front, but today she has convinced her whole family, which I've heard there's like 3 rows of, to sit up front. And Zoe's only 6, and she's like, I'm getting baptized. So there's people at church who are like, I'm not here. I don't even know who you are, but I know Zoe. And then they come and Zoe's like, let's sit on the front row. They're like, oh boy. Don't let anybody look down on you because you're young. But you set an example for all believers in what you say, how you live, in your faith, in your love, and your purity. Let's give it up for Zoe. Way to go, girl. Love it. Would you bow your heads with me? With your head bowed and eyes closed, I would just ask you to look into your heart. Zoe and 23 other people have decided to follow Jesus. There's a guy getting baptized today that's been struggling with addiction, almost lost his marriage. His wife came here, got saved, started praying for him. He's following Jesus today. Will you follow him? Who are you following? And today, I'd ask you to choose Jesus. And so just whisper this prayer. If you've never opened up your heart to God, just do that right now. So how do I do that? Just through this prayer. Just say something like this. Dear God, I need you. He'll hear you. You just say, Jesus, forgive me. And just tell him, Jesus, I believe you died on the cross, and I believe you rose again. So right now, come live in me. And just tell him, Jesus, set me free from the past, and I want to follow you from this day forward. And you just found not only the most amazing leader you'll ever find, but you just found the greatest news in all the world. I believe there's a lot of people in this room that are Christians and online right now who are Christ followers. Christ followers, can we just pray and whisper a prayer and just say, God, forgive us when our faith wanes. God, forgive us when we become indifferent. Lord, forgive us when we almost get bored with this thing. Can you just pray right now, Lord, renew my faith, revive my soul, and give me a passion that's contagious and a faith that is courageous. And Heavenly Father, as you hear those prayers, I want to thank you. I want to thank you that it doesn't matter what happened in the past. Jesus, you died for that. You're here in this room with nail-pierced hands, ready to reach down and pick all of us up by your grace. And I ask, God, that you would help all of us, whether we're 6 years old or 60 years old, to lead by example. No more excuses, Lord. And I pray, Lord, that you would bless this church as we go out from this place on a mission, not to argue with other people, but to be a light. Light doesn't say anything, but that we would shine for you in all we say and do and build a reputation that is truly pointing others to following Jesus. And as we today decide to follow Jesus, everybody following us will come to you as well. And we ask that this would happen in the name of our Lord and King and leader, Jesus Christ. And everybody said, amen. Let's give God a hand for his love.